Welcome everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Paul Bone. I'm Vertical Head of International in Barclays Business, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the next event in our Founders Assembly Programme, brought to you by Barclays Eagle Labs and Codebase. So, as supporters of the whole of the UK entrepreneurial and scale-up economy, we at Barclays are passionate about providing the innovators and scalers in the UK with the insight, environment, tools and support to access new markets and generate opportunities within new sectors and emerging industries so that they can build exciting, sustainable and profitable businesses. Now, this may be through our traditional and new banking products and services, or expert guidance from our international growth teams, or our exciting programs which are delivered with partners such as Codebase, or our Eagle Labs Academy, which is a free online learning tool where you can learn at your own pace if you're just starting out or scaling your business. And then there is the module learning you can access to guide you through building that business. So check that out after the session today if you haven't already done so, and you can find it at academy.uk.barclays. Now, today we have asked SaaS and AI leader, advisor and investor Yan Zhang, who will be in discussion with Mary McCallum from Codebase, to join us to provide some tips and tricks on how to build and scale. The topics discussed are an overview of options for you to think about to help you with your independent research and business decisions, so aren't intended as recommendations or advice. Remember as well that your business has its own individual circumstances. The statements and views expressed may not be applicable or suitable for your business. But if you found yourself with us via YouTube, you can also find a link to VVox in the description below to be able to join us in that chat. Now, that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Mary to introduce themselves and to dive into today's session. So, Mary, over to you.
Thanks, Paul. Hello, I'm Mary McCallum from Codebase. We are an ecosystem builder that helps startups and scale-ups of all stages grow, scale, expand their networks, and raise capital. I'm very happy to be partnering with Eagle Labs today, and especially happy to welcome Yan Zhang. Yan Zhang is the former COO of PolyAI, a world-leading enterprise AI voice assistant. He's helped scale the company from inception to Series C and helped launch over 100 enterprise AI deployments. He's now an advisor at Point72 Ventures, finding the most promising AI startups and scale-ups across Europe. We're really happy to have him here for a fireside chat today. We'll be asking Yan to share insights from his experiences to help us explore how to build and scale smarter, covering international SaaS and sales growth strategy, AI trends, and VC milestones for Series A investment. Yan, I've given a wee intro to you there, but I'd love to hear more about your experience and background, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Sure. Thank you, Mary, and hi, everyone. So as Mary said, I'm an advisor at Point72 Ventures. It is Point72 is best known to a lot of people in the finance world as Steve Cohen's hedge fund. I work for the venture wing of that fund, which is about $1 billion early stage fund, covering really a global remit in AI and defense. And so I look across the UK and continental Europe for the best early stage and growth stage investments in enterprise AI. And then prior to that, so I was the chief operating officer of a company called PolyAI. It's a London-based AI company. We got started, in the relative scheme of things, quite early in AI in 2018, and I joined the company when it was about 7 people, and so headed up the commercial efforts there for a long time, and scaled the company roughly from inception commercially to about Series C, and I know. We'll cover today a lot of what it takes to get a SaaS or enterprise AI company from 0 to, let's say, 1 million, and then from 1 to 10, and then 10 and beyond in revenues. And so would be excited and to talk about all of that and share some experiences today. And then prior to that, I was a consumer tech entrepreneur in China and sold 2 businesses and one didn't work out. experience the full gamut of entrepreneurship. So happy to share those experiences as well.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Yan. Maybe we could kick off by talking about your go-to-market strategy in PolyAI. I heard that you've maybe hit the US quite early on, and I'm also interested to hear how your go-to-market strategy changes as you grow and scale.
Sure. So just a little bit of background. So PolyAI is one of the, I think, 4 or 5 companies that's vying to be the voice of customer service in the world. It's the voice that you speak to when you call up customer service. We have now a lot of global deployments. So if you call up FedEx anywhere in the world, you're probably talking to a PolyAI bot. If you're calling up Marriott, Volkswagen, Pacific Gas and Electric. And so, yes, a lot of our footprint now is US based. A lot of our footprint is in fact global on behalf of US companies. But let me take the second part of that question first, Mary, which is the go-to-market strategy for, what I'm going to talk about is going to apply most to enterprise scale kind of companies, in the sense that you're selling to large businesses, and it applies somewhat if you're trying to sell to SMBs. But your 0 to 1, so 0 to 1 million in ARR, 1 to 10, so 1 to 10 million in ARR, and then 10 and beyond GTM strategies are going to be quite different. And so I'll share a few thoughts and experiences there. I think when we started, when we started go to market, it was actually in 2019. Point72, the company that I work for now, invested in PolyAI as its Series A investor. And one of the things they asked us to do is actually to go buy a contact center. This is now a very in vogue thing in AI, which is to do tech-enabled service roll-ups, so AI roll-ups of buying existing businesses and transforming it into AI. And I actually spent quite a lot of time traveling across the UK, and especially in Scotland, trying to find call center businesses to buy. It turned out not to be the best idea for that particular application of AI, though I still believe 5, 6, 7 years hence that it is a viable strategy for AI companies to go to market. But we spent about 6 months doing that, and then we decided that we needed to kind of go back to a more traditional way of going to market. And when you're starting off small, and even if you're kind of a Cambridge spin out and your founders are super smart, your biggest disadvantage is that you have very little credibility when you have no customers. And so the first, let's say 10 customers, or roughly the first million in ARR, requires what we called internally ninja moves, or really highly creative, probably non-repeatable types of go-to-market strategies to just try to get to the first 10 customers. And a lot of them shared the same approach, which is that you need to find partners, advisors, and corporate accelerators for that matter, that could lend you some of their credibility and go there. So our first client ever is Whitbread. So the parent company of Premier Inns, Beef Eaters, used to own Costa Coffee. And we ended up selling into Whitbread through a partner that had a call center contract with their restaurants. And we found that partner through just scouring, people we knew, was like a second degree intro. And he introduced us on the back of his master services agreement to go and run a pilot with Whitbread. Negotiating a contract of our own would have taken better part of a year, right? So in this case, when you're borrowing the both the credibility and the contract of an existing vendor, you can get in. We ended up getting a POC within 2 or 3 months. Second contract we went through a corporate accelerator that BP ran. And so again, you have an opportunity to get logos larger than you deserve in the very beginning of your journey if you go through a corporate accelerator. And then we worked with a team of advisors, so folks, ex-corporate executives, ex-partners at Big Four consulting firms, MBB consulting firms who had relationships and who could leverage some of their credibility to speak on your behalf. And so it took us a long time. We also grew up in the throes of COVID. We didn't know whether it was going to be a good opportunity for us or bad. It turned out to be quite bad and then quite good. Most contact center got rid of their tech budgets during COVID to buy laptops for everyone so that they could work from home. But after that, a lot of companies were not prepared for the labor shortages after COVID, and so AI solutions had a lot of tailwinds after that. So again, it's being creative in a highly uncertain atmosphere. I think when you get to 1 million in ARR, roughly 10-ish to 20 customers, you're going to have to kind of switch gears and find ways to scale. I think getting incentives right and trying to hire a sales team, people who are outside of the founding team to pitch your company is often a point of friction for a lot of companies in growth. One of the things that I'll share here is I will never forget one of the first sales reps that we hired came in and told us, "I'm not going to pitch because that's not what I do. I sell software and I'm going to sell software, but I'm not going to pitch." And we all found that to be quite strange at the time. But what I ended up realizing, especially having talked to a lot of Series B plus types of SaaS companies, is that when you're selling a highly technical product, really the salesperson's primary responsibility is to push the deal forward. Right? It is not necessarily to learn all of the technical details, all of the case studies within a short compressed period of time so that they can be as credible as one of the C-suite, but really they are there to push the deal forward every day and to make sure that you have a process in which the deal advances towards signature every day. And that is something that you learn when you start scaling. And we implemented a system where only a few people within the team really would pitch, but the salespeople would help push the deal forward. And so you don't necessarily have to do that, but I'm just using that as an example of kind of thinking about ways in which you could scale your sales efforts as you scale from 1 to 10. And then beyond 10, I think you need a very disciplined go-to-market structure. This is the point where a lot of outside experience could be applied to what you do, because the larger you get, the more similar your go-to-market motion would be for people who've had those experiences before. And so, that's the point when you're sailing from 10 to 50 to beyond, where you want to be making your quarterly goals. You want to make sure that you have a GTM machine that is going to give you the right leads and the right traction in deals and the right visibility, observability in the data, so that you can, make your quarter within plus or minus 5%, 10% of the goal that you've set for yourself. And happy to delve into any of those either now or in the comments.
Awesome. I would just like to ask, a lot of the startups and scale-ups that we work with often have trouble hiring that first sales team. You've spoken a bit about what kind of sales, what kind of role you're wanting them to do. How do you hire the best people for that? Do you have any tips?
I think that hire quickly and fire quickly is probably kind of a something that early. I think it is the challenge. Actually, I think for a lot of especially first-time founders, is not necessarily that they hire poor, but they fire poor, in the sense that it is if you're really serious about, if you're really realistic about the lack of experience that you have in running a sales team as a CEO, your first time CEO, you're not going to hire a CRO. You're going to find some people who may work out, may not work out, and your hit rate for a successful salesperson is likely to be low, right? And I think that you need to be honest about that. And I think that you need to build realistic goals to see whether salespeople are hitting their targets. And salespeople interview very well, and salespeople are and they could be good in another context, in another organization. They may not be good. I mean, this is not the fact that they may not work out in your context is not their fault at all. But it is your fault if you're not realistic about where you are, their performance, their traction, their ability to kind of hit quota within the prescribed period of time. And so you just have to do it. You have to do it a lot. You have to do it quite a bit. And I would actually, one of the things that I think is important is it is really important for the C-suite not to delegate leadership to sales too early. I think you need to, as CEO, run the sales team for at least to a team of 3 or 4 people, and really kind of understand the mechanics of it. Really also mentor those people to on the product and what they should say, and before they outsource the scaling of the team to a pro who's done it before.
Awesome, thank you. We do have a question come in. Is it worth being open to community also in this stage to build reputation?
Open to community. Sorry, I'm not sure what that worth open to community. I'm not sure exactly what kind of a community that's referring to. If the person who asked the question could just clarify. Mary, happy to take that question maybe after the next question so that we could move on.
That's awesome, thank you. You did mention your advisors as well in the 0 to 1 phase. Where did you get those advisors from?
I think networking and much later on raw outreach. I think in the very beginning I feel like the thing about networking is that it really is something that doesn't quite pay off in the immediate term, but pays off big in the long term. And I think that as a founder, you have to right size the amount of time that you commit to such a thing. And I think we met a lot of people in the beginning who were tangentially related to what we, were tangentially related to our mission at the time, who kind of did something in the call center space, who knew someone who ran call centers, who knew ex-executives there. But then in retrospect, 5 years hence, when we're looking at kind of our most instrumental deals and hires, a lot of the people came from those early day networking meetings that we've had. These coffees that you didn't exactly go into with a goal ended up being incredibly instrumental. I don't think that founders should spend all of their time doing this. This is actually what I spend most of my time doing as a VC. But I think that you ought to budget some of your time to do those, to create opportunities for yourself in the future.
Awesome, thank you. We've got another few questions come in. At what point does founder-led sales generally take a back seat and the sales team take over?
I think sometimes I think it's obviously different situational, but if I were to put a range, just before your Series A to between your Series A to Series B. By the time you hit your Series B, VCs would want to see that you've put the instruments of scaling in place, right? That you have not just sales reps, but a significant percentage of your sales reps who are on track to hitting quota. And so, and it's going to take you a year, 18 months to build that. So, right before you raise Series A or right after you raise Series A, I think is the right point.
Awesome, thank you. Another question here for CEOs that haven't built a sales team before. Do you have any advice on how to get the advisors for this, or how to find people who are great first bets?
Yep. Well, I think I think that, there is no magic of like where to find people, or recruiters wouldn't be, such a large profession and such a successful one. But what I can say that you can actually maximize your chance for success if you're very honest about what your role is as the CEO and what the salesperson's role or what the sales leader's role is. Your role is to really talk about the product, right? Your role is to make sure that you can talk about the product credibly, answer all the questions that are technical. This is now when you're doing CEO-led sales, and really paint a vision, right? An exciting vision for this. The salesperson is supposed to be at the very beginning, create a process and push that process along, right? When you're the CEO, you're really passionate in the first pitch, and then you get off the pitch, you're excited, but then you have a couple of internal meetings, you meet with the board, and 2 hours later, you've completely forgotten about the details of that particular client meeting that you've had. It's super important that someone remembers to do all of the follow-up. Someone remembers to, text the client, to push for signatures, to make sure that you call the prospect maybe uncomfortably often, right? When they've said that they get back to you and they don't get back to you. None of these things are things that the CEO can do themselves, and should do. The running the process really ought to be up to the salesperson, right? And so I feel like the best advice that I have to early stage companies is separate the pitch and separate and the process. That way you will both increase the probability of success for yourself and the salesperson.
Awesome. I've got a great question here because it straddles your VC and your sales side of things. But recently, early stage VCs have discussed changes in go-to-market strategy and traditional methods like paid ads no longer being successful. In the new age of AI, have you seen any innovative practices which have been successful in customer acquisition?
Yeah, I think the answer to that question is going to be very, very different depending on whether you're selling to large enterprises, SMEs, whether you're running a prosumer product or selling to the consumer, right? And I think in general, for anyone that's kind of selling to enterprises larger than the prosumer type of market, the answer is really content, and content marketing is a separate issue. I'm sure that you can run a seminar just on that particular topic, so I'm not going to delve into it. But it is finding out a way for the thought leaders within your company, so it's a C-suite and maybe a few other folks, of how do you create content in the incredibly busy schedule that you have. And I think the way that we did it, and this was I think quite a few years into our journey, is to start a podcast every week and be disciplined, where Nicola, the CEO, or somebody else in the C-suite would speak to another member of the staff and talk about what's new in AI. And what you end up doing is you create a lot of video content, you create a lot of textual content, you create content that could be syndicated through different channels, right? And you end up using some of it in sales pitches. You end up with new go-to-market ideas all the time. So the key is like, how do you create content when everyone is super busy? I think that's the question that you should try to answer.
Great, thanks, Yan. I'd love to delve more into the AI and VC side of things, but first I have one last question on your work with PolyAI, and that is, have you got any advice for people that want to go global, or companies that want to go global? I know you hit America pretty early on.
Yep.
What advice can you share? Thank you.
Yeah, so we hit America pretty early on. We've had some interesting kind of early follies. We ended up hiring a salesperson who was probably in the middle of COVID, who was probably a complete fraudster and completely misrepresented his background. He's also done that for many actually different SaaS companies. We ended up like investigating a whole trail. I mean, but that was also quite special in the sense that, you know, COVID was a very difficult time for people to get to know each other in real life, and you have more of this type of things happening. But what I would say, generic advice for everyone is when you're early, you should, if you want to go global, commit to one place, and that place, unless strategically it is not the right place, is usually the United States, because it is the largest market. And you know, I'm not like necessarily a pro-US person speaking with an American accent, but what I'll say from a VC point of view is that when you've cracked the US market and a significant portion of your revenues come from a place like the US, VCs have a more confidence that you're going to have a larger market to tackle, that you've solved this very difficult problem, and so that will affect kind of their judgment of the maturity of your business. I think that when I hear from early stage VCs that they have a client in the UAE or Japan or Turkey, and they're working on all of them simultaneously, that does worry me a little bit, especially on the enterprise side. The table stakes of delivering those services in each of those markets is non-trivial, and so you may have a very successful, very quick kind of top funnel sales process, but really to deliver, and if you spread your kind of limited resources quite thin, I think that's an amber light for me. I think for European-based founders, I think we were lucky at Poly because you had me, who's you know, culturally American. I live in London and I'm a British citizen now, but I'm culturally American. When we had the head of our sales engineering was also an American transplant in the UK. He'd grown up in New Jersey and attended college in the UK, and so we had some kind of, you know, understanding of the lay of the land. But for most founders, I would say if you're not going to move there temporarily, you need to spend a lot of time there. I think it is absolutely true that the first few customers that you have will question your commitment to the United States, and you need to show up often to reassure them. I also think that one thing that we learned during COVID is that prior to COVID, people would set up in America and set up a base. And obviously you're going to have a mailing address. You can say your HQ is in San Francisco or New York, and get a mail and like a mailbox in a WeWork somewhere. But I think it is possible for you to hire fully remote. You know, different American states have different kind of labor laws, and you need to get comfortable with that. But your advantage of being a European company is that you can take advantage of the entire country as a source of talent. And so you don't need to feel pressure that you need to hire everybody in Boston or everybody in San Francisco. You really can. And you will, and that is a plus, right? A fully remote type of job for a mid-career marketer or a senior engineer is going to be a plus for a lot of people who would like to live in a lower cost geography in America and don't want to go into the office all the time. So that's a little bit of generic advice for folks.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. That was interesting what you said with your VC hat on about amber flags if you're going after too many markets at once. Can you talk a little into either red flags or indeed the milestones that you and other VCs are looking for when someone's looking to raise a Series A, and perhaps how that's changed in recent years?
Yeah, I'll talk about the milestones, and then I'll talk a little bit about the red flags. I think that I think a lot of people in the audience probably have heard that in the last 6 months to a year, the milestone requirement for Series A has changed somewhat, and because of AI, because how good the foundational models are and how much better it is when you build good software on top of those foundational models, companies are getting to value a lot more quickly than they did before. And so a lot of companies are getting to 3 to 5 million in ARR faster than ever before, AI-driven SaaS companies. And so Whereas kind of finger in the wind type of standard for a Series A company around 2022, 23 would have been about $1 million in ARR. Now, I'm not going to say it's 3 million. That's often the number that's given, but I think you're certainly going to be compared against a lot of companies that's reached 3 million in ARR. Now, it is fair for you to say, if you're not there, it's very well. What is your net revenue retention? What is your churn? A lot of those companies that's gotten to larger ARRs do have large churn, and I think that's fair. But you're going to be measured against a different I guess standard. And what I would say there is Series A for us, again, us, Point72 Ventures, and most likely generically for most VCs, is everything that you care about in the pre-seed and seed, which is founder, market size, appealingness of the problem, founder market fit, the product. And when you get to Series A, you want to look at signs of product market fit. It doesn't mean that you've reached product market fit, but signs of product market fit. So something like net revenue retention, which is a combination of churn and your ability to upsell, is really, really important, right? And so even if you are not quite at that, if AI is a part of your problem, but you're not lovable and it's not, you're not kind of a cursor, you're not growing as quickly to get to 3 million, you're selling to large banks or insurance companies and it's taking a long time. We really want to look at things like net revenue retention to make sure that your customers like you and you have the capability of upselling them. It is so important to build in the natural upsell in your kind of pricing model, especially at a place like PolyAI, where in the beginning it's just all about getting new logos. But as you scale from kind of low 8-figure to mid 8-figure, your ability to turn $1 million deals into $3 million deals is so important in getting to those hurdles later on. We want to see shortened sales cycles, so that if you in the beginning it took you 9 months to get a contract, are you shrinking that to 6 and 5 months? Do you have? That's a good sign of product market fit. That you've cracked how to sell your product a little bit better. And Series A investors who commit that kind of capital will do calls without your permission to your customers, right? They will arrange for expert calls to your customers. We've had VCs tell us that we've won deals before we knew that we've won deals, right? Because they've done their homework. And so make sure that your customers like you, that they are going to say that they love and they love what you do, and they're not going to think about using another company's products. So those are the milestones. In terms of the red flag, it's not so much of a red flag, but I think an error that a lot of people commit while raising Series A or raising Series, really raising any round of capital except for maybe pre-seed, is that they don't quite understand the concept of momentum. I think that the most critical thing when you're raising capital is that you show momentum. That it's unlikely for a Series A that someone's going to write you a check the first time that they meet you. Usually you'll want to have a coffee with someone 3 or 4 months before you raise and get to know them. And so that 3 or 4 months later, even if it is the only other time that you've met that person, our brains basically just say, oh, I know that person, right? That person is a little bit more trustworthy just because I've met that person once. And in the course of those 3 or 4 months, it is very important that you build momentum. You say that I'm going to, it's beginning of September, end of August and beginning of September now. If I'm going to be raising in December, which is an odd time to be raising money, but let's just say so we're at 1 million right now. I'm pretty sure that we're going to get to 2 million by the end of December, right? You should have the pipeline to actually get to 2 million in December and really show that growth. Now, it's easy to say, it's very hard to do. I've been on the other side of the table. I've spent most of my career on the other side of the table. You need to do a lot of engineering of your pipeline to make sure that the right deals close, right? And you need to kind of stack the deals in that right time frame to be closing so that you can show that momentum. It is totally fine if that momentum is not sustainable. A lot of companies raise on a very beautiful momentum, and then their sales slow because you've packed everything into closing. That's okay. That's par for the course. You're not misleading people, but it's super important to be showing momentum when you're raising, and to show that you are you have a good idea of what's in your pipeline and what can close. I think that in terms of what momentum you need to show, you need to, like, best decile companies grow at 3x plus every year. So 2 sustained quarters of growth that puts you on a 3x trajectory, right? Hard, very difficult. I've been on the other side. You need to engineer your pipeline to do that, but you should be hyper aware of momentum when you're raising.
Great advice. Meet for coffee, build trust, and show the momentum, Sarah. Thanks so much. I have a great question here. When Point72 evaluates early stage AI SaaS, what carries more weight? Proprietary data advantage, infrastructure scalability, or early distribution strategy?
Let's see. Easy answer would be all of them. But I would say that I think early distribution strategy, the fact that the fact that you can sell, that people like, that use your product and use you, is a better proof of your long-term success as a company than any technical metric about how good your technology is. And I think that, and when we look at technology advantage, we often look at the founding team rather than any particular technical metrics. And it comes from kind of the heuristic that the market that you're in now and the problems that you encounter today are not going to be the problems and the market that you're going to have in 5 years. And the only thing that's going to remain constant is the founding team's ability to be solving those problems, right? And I think that if you look at a company like PolyAI that built some of the first voice applications after the transformer architecture came out in 2018 versus us now building on top of GPT, the latest OpenAI models, it's a completely different paradigm. The reason why we're able to build really good products, no matter what the generation of the technology is because the founding team is superb at solving those problems. And so it really is about traction, and founder are the most important things.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm keen to steer us into getting some insight from the sort of front lines of AI when you're out there scouting companies for the fund. And I have a question here that leads nicely into it. So given the rapid adoption of AI-driven SaaS tools, where do you see the biggest underserved verticals over the next 18 months?
Okay, it's a really good question. I know that verticals, probably people are looking for industries, but maybe I can answer the question in another way, which is that, when I'm looking at the SaaS market, you can generally break down SaaS into automation tools, systems of record, collaboration tools, communication tools, development tools. And I'll just speak to a few of these where I have some kind of a take. I think, and then maybe I'll talk a little bit about verticals, but I think I'll have less interesting things to say. So the two largest pools of SaaS is either you automate something, it's an automation tool of some sort, or it's a system of record of some sort. I think those are the two largest kind of subcategories in SaaS, and both of them have are encountering incredibly interesting industry dynamics right now. So PolyAI is an automation tool of sorts, right? So we automate phone calls on behalf of companies. We try to mimic the behavior of human agents to solve customer issues. I think that when you're selling an automation tool into a company, what is really interesting is that the AI is going to be really good at parts of that automation and quite poor at other parts. And you can kind of see this in customer service, in legal, in one-shotting product development. And I think one of the things that companies have to decide when they're building an automation tool at this day and age is whether they want to remain a pure tech player or for the time being to become a tech-enabled service. And the difference between that is that one, you're a pure tech company, you just sell software, or two, you go and deliver the result, whatever it is. And the best example for that is probably companies, I know 3 or 4 companies that's making good progress in tackling the insurance claim space, insurance claim automation, right? So where if you want to, let's say, get reimbursed for a vet appointment, there's 14 or 15 steps that the insurance company has to do to kind of issue that payment to you. And some of them can be done with AI. Some of them would need human judgment. And you can sell the software and ask your client to repurpose their team so that they can work in the context of your software. But that is really, really difficult. I always tell people that if the answer that you're giving to your client organizations is that you can fire 2 people, but you need to hire this one person, that's a no-go. That you're not going to be able to get that kind of an organizational outcome. And so and a lot of companies find it very difficult to deploy software because they need the client organization or the workflow to change in a certain way. And at that point, you need to consider whether it's worthwhile for you to change your business model and hire the people that your clients would have hired to do the grading, to do the judgment, to do the part of the workflow that takes human input and deliver the result, right? That you become a tech-enabled service instead of a pure software company. And there's advantages there because if you swallow the edge cases, you will get know-how, you'll get data, edge case data to train on, you will create a better product. But that you take on a different business model and you have to be able to manage that whole workflow. So that's kind of what's interesting in the automation space right now. I think what's interesting in the systems of record space is that you have these monolithic kind of pieces of software. Like if someone were to say, "Oh, I wanted to displace SAP," it's quite a difficult proposition. It probably still is, but 5 years ago, people would have not really thought about it. But I do think with AI and the fact that you can automate the transfer of data, you do have new opportunities in building systems of record, right? On top of and it's it usually also starts from automation. It starts from building automation on tops of these systems of record, but you have the opportunity of building a new system of record, which are the most enduring forms of SaaS. And the last example I'll give that I think is really interesting is that what I've seen in AI is that a lot of ideas that were quite popular but unrealistic in, let's say, 10 years ago, in 2014 to 15, everyone wanted to build two-sided marketplaces, and two-sided marketplaces are incredibly difficult to build. And so a lot of those ideas were kind of left at the conception stage because nobody wanted to fund these things. But then, AI is an interesting it provides an interesting opening for people to start thinking whether you could speed run one side of a two-sided marketplace. There's an interesting company in Luxembourg that got funded that sold tractor parts called the name escapes me, but I think they were funded in March, and it's just an e-commerce site for tractor parts. And you kind of think you read that announcement and you think that this is kind of strange because this is like a 2005 company type of idea getting funded in 2025. But then you think about where AI has done the heavy lifting is that tractor parts the product ontology is incredibly difficult. There are many, many different models. They last for a long time. There are thousands of parts per machine. Where is that data kept but kind of, yellowing, paper catalogs that only your dealer would know? But then AI can speed run the collation of all of that data and tell you exactly what you need. And you can put that up on the web and people will use your service to look it up. And all of a sudden you've built one side of a two-sided marketplace, which now enables you to do a 2005 idea that wasn't ever done because it was just too hard. And so there are lots of ideas like that, probably in the trash heaps of VC's offices, from 10 years ago, that are all of a sudden now viable. And I think it's worthwhile taking a look in those as well.
Cool. Quickly looping back, the automation side of things there. We had a question earlier about the viability of lead gen and sales being done by AI. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that it is. I think that lead generation and the top funnel aspects of sales, so getting people on a meeting with you, is going to be heavily influenced by AI. It already is. It's getting. I also think that just all sorts of tools that will guide salespeople through the sales process and give them the type of sales enablement material at every particular stage to the needs of that particular prospect will be the norm. Lots of companies are working on this space. A lot are getting traction. I do believe that you'll have kind of a winner take all type of platform winners in that space, because ultimately I don't think that the CRO would want to buy $1 million, or the CRO and the head of sales ops wouldn't want to buy $1 million sales tools. They'll probably want to buy from 1 or 2 vendors, and so you'll see probably a lot of consolidation in that field. But it absolutely is working, and I think that it will it will not replace the CEO pitching, or you having a good salesperson building relationships and pushing and navigating the client organizations. But a lot of top funnel stuff will get automated.
Thank you. I have a delicate question here about how worried do you think companies that are not AI first need to be? There's a lot of AI first companies coming on and doing things that existing companies have been building for a while. Do you have any advice?
Yep. I think a lot of companies, retcon and brand themselves an AI company. A lot of companies kind of, shirk at that and kind of, I think that I just reframe kind of the problem there, right? Which is that it firstly doesn't matter if you are an AI company or not, if you're providing your value to your customer. And so ultimately the point of starting a business is to create value for your customer and making a profit. It doesn't really matter what the VC thinks. It certainly doesn't matter what the technorati thinks. Now, it is also true that AI is going to change automation tools. It's going to change systems of record, marketplaces, collaboration tools, design tools. All of those things are going to look very, very different in 5 years. And you just have to be very honest about what your company's place would be in that new world that you anticipate. Right. And it doesn't matter. You don't have to have an AI company, but you need to be honest about the future. And I think that perhaps reframing that the question that way will be a little bit easier for people who are not quite comfortable with rebranding themselves to start thinking about that very important question.
Thank you, Yan. I could speak to you about AI and VC for forever. You're so insightful. Thank you. I did want to talk a little bit about stress management, if you don't mind going there. You've obviously been under very stressful situations as a CEO, scaling a company to Series C, and also you'll see a lot of founders trying to raise capital, which is extremely stressful. Have you got any advice for our founders out there on how to manage their stress and well-being?
Yep. It's a great question. I think most founders know what stress feels. Every founder knows what stress feels like. I think that what took me a very long time to learn is the counterpart to stress, which is resilience. which is a word that I've always heard, right? You hear all these words that are, that you've heard a million times before: resilience, integrity, and all. But it's like, it's a different thing to kind of know it physically, right? And I started to know what resilience meant when I bought an Aura ring. And an Aura ring is for those of you who haven't seen it, is a ring that you wear and tell you how well you sleep, and a lot of other kind of physical metrics. One of the things that they measure is how much sleep you've gotten, the quality of that sleep, how much stress you encounter during the day, and how much downtime you've encountered during the day. And they have a formula, and they mash all of those things together, and they give you an output that's called resilience. And when you're told what your resilience level is, and when you can observe day after day, you really start to feel the difference of how you handle stress when you are told what stress, what your ability to handle stress is. And sometimes, you start the day a little bit tired, you don't feel it, you have 2 coffees, you're ready to go, your first meeting goes well, second meeting goes well, all of a sudden you get a text to say that this contract that was supposed to be signed this quarter is now being pushed back to next quarter because some executive is not there to sign the thing, and then you have another key employee who says that they're not happy, they're thinking about quitting, and all of a sudden, right, your stress level goes up. And it's super important. Now, that is just a normal day for an entrepreneur. It's super important for you to be able to handle those situations with grace, because in the long run, if you make the right decisions towards those things and not explode at your employee who's experiencing genuine, like maybe frustration, right? And you talk to them, and it could mean the difference between having a good team member who's with you for the long run versus someone who gets frustrated and quits, right? And so you need to kind of watch your ability to handle stress. And knowing that data point, I think, has been super, super important for me. So I'm not gonna I'm not gonna get a referral fee from Aura Ring for this. And there are other things that you can buy that measures your level of stress and resilience. But I would say, concretizing that into a data point is super important for you to learn about yourself.
Awesome. Thank you. That's really good advice. How different do you think the entrepreneurial mindset is between what you've said? Sounds very San Francisco to me. I love it. What do you think the difference is in being a founder in the States and being a founder in Europe at the moment?
I think that I think one obvious thing is that, if you're a SaaS founder, right? Because if you're a consumer founder and you're shipping physical products, you're kind of constrained by geography, and I give you a different answer. But if you're selling something that could be implemented everywhere, I think the European founder has to think internationally on day one. Now it's a lot easier for folks in places where the home market is very small, like Estonia and Israel, which are 2 countries that have produced exceptional companies. But it's a little bit harder for folks in the UK, France, Germany, that have sizable home markets, right? But you have to be thinking on day one, that to be a public market size company, that I have to have an international footprint, and really you should plan for that on day one. I think that the UK is still figuring out what its advantages are in the AI race. I would say that talent, DeepMind is still the alpha and omega, I think, of AI, right? And people talk a lot about OpenAI and how great OpenAI is, but DeepMind has by far the greatest concentration of talent, and it is based in London. And we need to create a entrepreneurial atmosphere for those people to feel empowered and safe to come out and build companies in the UK. And I think that there is such a deep reserve of talent in UK and Europe in general, and I think that it's actually it's Point72's point of view. The reason why I'm here is that there's probably more alpha or risk-free return in placing a long-term bet here, because the things that are difficult to change are already true here, right? Like the quality of school, the quality of talent, and the things that are holding the ecosystem back are relatively easy to change, like the presence of capital and the and bringing a more kind of risk-taking entrepreneurial attitude towards the people who should be building companies.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Yan. It's been fascinating talking to you, and I'm sure the audience has really appreciated it too. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Mary. And I want to thank to the audience as well. If you're building an interesting company in enterprise AI, please add me on LinkedIn. Would love to keep in touch and be helpful to you if I can.
Thank you, Yan and Mary. Many great and interesting points, Yan, and thank you very much for doing such a great job hosting, Mary. Having managed pipelines myself, the need to have the right sales roles alongside understanding what will convert and when in a pipeline really resonated with me. That's probably the banker in me. Not all deals close, so more must obviously go in the top end and comes out the bottom. And also that point about organisations needing to change quickly as they grow and access new markets. I think what really resonated as well, bearing in mind today was my first day back off annual leave, I came into a full inbox, was knowing yourself and your own well-being needs is such a positive contributor to a firm's success. Before we close, if you aren't aware of Eagle Labs, I mentioned it earlier on what we do, please do visit labs.uk.barclays to find out about all the support that is available to businesses just like yours. We've just launched lots of exciting new programs, and there's something for everyone, whatever stage of business you are currently at. So definitely check us out to find out more about that free support. If you're already a member or connected with us, do reach out to us or your contact to find out more about the latest activity and events and support on offer. But finally, and just to close, I would like to once again thank Yan and Mary, and also everybody who's joined the event today for your time today. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.